I used to be the one she leaned on. Now I am the thing she avoids. The sticky note on my refrigerator might as well have been a death notice. Bright pink paper. Amber's perfect handwriting. 23 neat words that shattered 12 years of marriage. Something about taking 2 weeks with Tyler. Needing space. Asking me to respect her journey. Signed with a tidy little heart. I stood there in my boxers and yesterday's work shirt, gripping my morning coffee like it was the last normal thing left. It was. My name is Nick Bennett, and I fix cars. It is not glamorous, but it is honest work. My hands carry permanent stains of grease. My back complains from sliding under frames, and most days I smell more like the WD-40 lubricant than any cologne on a department store shelf. Amber used to say she loved that about me, the simple truth of it. That was before she discovered yoga pants, green smoothies, and, apparently, personal trainers named Tyler. The house felt staged, like one of those model homes where nobody actually lives. Too clean, too arranged. Vanilla candles still burned in the living room, that sweet, heavy scent mixing with the ghost of her expensive perfume. The security cameras she pushed to install last month suddenly clicked into place in my head. She had been planning a runway exit, not an argument. I looked through the kitchen window at our perfect lawn. Across the fence, Mrs. Henderson had her blinds open just enough to watch. In a town like Maple Ridge, word outruns truth. By lunchtime, folks would be whispering that Amber Bennett ran off on her mechanic husband with a younger guy. I reached behind the coffee filters and pulled out the secret phone I had already found. Amateur stuff. I almost laughed. The cliché of the cheating wife with a hidden device would be funny if it did not punch you in the gut. The messages were not a movie, though. They were real and raw. 3 months of explicit texts. Selfies where she wore my favorite flannel. Hotel confirmations that made my stomach climb into my throat. His name was Tyler Brooks, 28 years old, personal trainer at a place called Prime Fit Training. He drove a Tesla on a lease and specialized in making married women find their inner goddess. His social media was a steady stream of shirtless progress photos and quotes about living your truth. The kind of guy who uses the word literally, like seasoning, and treats protein powder like a food group. I scrolled until my thumb hurt. Every message felt like a small knife. Amber, my practical, no-nonsense wife who mocked influencers, was now sending hard eyes emojis and planning quiet weekends away. The same woman who once joked that Tyler looked like a Ken doll with father issues was calling him her soulmate. My phone buzzed. A text from my business partner, Mark Davis. Saw Amber's car at the airport. Everything okay? I typed back, never better. She is on a journey of self-discovery. What kind of journey? He replied, the kind that ends with divorce papers? The house phone rang. I let the machine catch it. Amber's voice came through breathless and hurried. Nick, I know you are there. Pick up. We need to talk like adults. I am not the villain. We both know this marriage has been dead for years. I just had the courage to act. Courage. That is what she called walking out on her husband with a note. I poured another coffee and sat at the kitchen table, the same table where we planned vacations, talked about whether to have kids, and fought over money when times got tight. Now the wood grain looked like a court record of every bad decision I had made. How long had she been setting this up? Which of our friends already knew? How many pitying looks had I missed because I was busy trying to be steady? The garage has always been my spot. Problems show themselves under good light. You listen. You diagnose. You fix. No mind games. No journeys. Just cause and effect. I drove to Bennett Auto Repair on the edge of town and felt my shoulders drop as the bay doors rolled up. Mark was waiting with the guys, Tony and Eric, men who had stood shoulder to shoulder with me for years. They understood loyalty. They also knew when to keep a man's business his own. Boss, Mark said, not quite meeting my eyes. Heard about Amber. News moves fast. Mrs. Parker came in for an oil change and said she saw Amber loading suitcases at 5 o'clock in the morning. Of course she did. Mrs. Parker probably sleeps with the porch light on and a police scanner humming. So what is the plan? Tony asked. I looked at my crew. Mark with his beer belly and endless supply of lousy jokes. Tony, who could tell you what was wrong with an engine by listening with his eyes closed. Eric, grinding every weekday to push 2 kids through college on a mechanic's salary. These were my people, not Amber's wine and cheese crowd who treated me like the hired help in my own house. The plan is we work, I said. Same as always. I said it like I meant it, and maybe part of me did. But the other part knew the ground had already shifted. Amber made her choice. Now I had to make mine. Did I want to play the victim in my own life? Or did I want to be something else entirely? By lunchtime, I had 17 missed calls from Amber. I deleted them without listening. Then I grabbed a small duffel and headed to the week-to-week rental above Bobby's boxing gym. The place smelled like old sweat, lost fights, and industrial cleaner. It was not home, but it was simple, and right then simple was something I could trust. The walls were thin enough that I could track every grunt and every thud from the heavy bag below me. I heard the bell, the shuffle of feet, and Bobby giving speeches to wide-eyed kids who believed fighting was their one ticket out of nowhere. For me, the noise worked like a clock, steady, honest, and loud enough to drown out the parts of my head that liked to replay things I wished I had not seen. Amber had been back from her journey for 3 days, and her voice messages were climbing the panic ladder in perfect stages. Turns out Tyler did not make it home on time. There were irregularities in his passport, according to the airline. Amazing how one simple phone call to my buddy Logan Price, who handles airport security checks, can cause the kind of random secondary inspection that ruins a weekend getaway. I did not yell. I did not chase anyone through a terminal. I just let the system take a closer look. I was nursing a cup of coffee when Mrs. Henderson knocked. She held a casserole dish like it was a trophy and wore the expression of someone who had just hit the neighborhood gossip jackpot. "Nick, honey, I brought you some tuna noodle casserole," she said. "Figured you might need a little home cooking." Translation: I want details, and I am paying in carbohydrates. "That is kind of you, Mrs. Henderson," I said. Such a shame about Amber. Though between you and me, she lowered her voice, I always thought she was a bit too big for her britches. Remember when she complained my wind chimes were too loud? Wind chimes. As if a little gentle music could hurt anyone's delicate nerves. I let her roll. In Maple Ridge, Mrs. Henderson is better than a public relations firm. By evening, her version of events would land in every coffee shop, salon chair, and church basement within a 10-mile radius. "Of course," she went on, watching my face, "some folks are saying you drove her to it. Working all the time. Never taking her any place fancy. But I told Marge Hicks, that man worked his fingers to the bone for that woman, and this is how she pays him back." "I appreciate the support," I said. "You know what you need?" she added, brightening. "A good lawyer. My nephew Daniel does divorces. Took his own wife to the cleaners after she ran off with her Pilates instructor. He got the house, the car, and half her retirement. I filed that away. I will keep it in mind." After she left, I headed downstairs. Bobby was working a teenage kid through footwork, calling out combinations in his gravelly coach voice. He had been a semi-pro once, before a detached retina ended the dream. Now he trained kids and middle-aged men like me who sometimes needed something solid to hit. "Bennett," he called when he saw me. "You look like hell." "Feel worse," I said. "Good. Anger makes you focused. Get changed." 20 minutes later, I was on the heavy bag, letting 12 years of frustration travel through my fists. Each shot had a memory attached. Amber rolling her eyes when I tracked mud in after a winter call-out. Amber springing dinner parties on me at the last minute. Amber introducing me as just my husband. Like I was a talking piece of furniture she kept polished for company. During my water break, Bobby wiped his hands on a towel. "Your wife called here," he said. "What, this morning? Wanted to know if you were acting erratic." I told her you seemed pretty rational, considering the stunt she pulled. He shook his head. "She was worried about your mental state. I suggested that if she truly cared about your well-being, she might not have run off with a muscled-up pretty boy." I laughed in spite of myself. Bet she loved that. She hung up. But she will call again. People like that cannot stand losing control of the story. He was not wrong. Amber had spent years managing my image, sanding me down into her version of a safe project. The blue-collar husband with a heart of gold, rough around the edges but trainable. Something she could present to her friends. Look how I domesticated him. Well, the project had been canceled. I was done being a display. I was walking back toward the stairs when I saw it. My truck sat in the lot with "Not Man Enough" spray painted across the hood in bright red letters. The anger hit like a physical shove. This was not just a cheap act. It was a message. Somebody wanted me to feel small, to know exactly how they measured me. Not good enough to keep my own wife. I called the police for the paper trail more than any real hope of justice. Officer Collins rolled up about 20 minutes later, took photos, and asked the usual questions. Got any enemies? Anyone who might want to hurt you? My wife left me for her personal trainer, I said. Take your pick. He winced. Could be random, he said, but his tone said otherwise. You should put up some cameras. And, Mr. Bennett, watch your back. Domestic messes get ugly quick. When he left, I stood staring at the hood. The paint job would run around $800, which meant money pulling out of the shop to cover something that should not have happened in the first place. But the bigger price was the humiliation. Everyone who saw that truck would understand what the message meant. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. How does it feel to lose everything? I stared at the screen while the gym bell rang downstairs, steady as a heartbeat. For the first time that day, I felt the anger settle into something quieter and sharper. If they thought I was finished, they were not paying attention. Amber would never text me from a random number. She is too direct for games. Tyler is not bright enough for psychological warfare. So who was pulling the strings? I saved the number anyway and headed back upstairs. Time to stop playing defense. The answer came around 3 o'clock in the morning, when I could not sleep and made the mistake of scrolling through Amber's social media like a man who knows it will hurt and does it anyway. Her photo grid was a carefully staged highlight reel of our life together. Romantic dinners, sunny vacations, anniversary smiles that now felt counterfeit. The comments were a gold mine of fake sympathy and thinly veiled gossip. Then I saw the one that stopped me. Brooke Lawson, Amber's best friend from college and the maid of honor at our wedding, wrote, "Sometimes we have to break a few hearts to find our true selves. So proud of you for being brave enough to follow your bliss." I could almost hear her voice saying it. Brooke had been whispering poison in Amber's ear for months. She never liked me, not from day one. At every dinner party and every gathering, she dropped little hints about Amber settling or wasting her potential, like I was a detour she took by accident. I opened Brooke's profile and started digging. There it was. 6 months ago, her own marriage blew up. Her husband, now Jason Miller, ran off with a coworker, split the accounts, and left Brooke angry, broke, and hunting for someone else to blame. Misery likes company. Sometimes it recruits. The next morning, I drove to Prime Fit training. Tyler's Tesla sat in the parking lot, gleaming white with vanity plates that read Fit God. I parked my spray-painted truck where he would have to see it and watched him through the floor-to-ceiling windows. He was training a middle-aged woman, standing too close, hands on her shoulders while she squatted, same routine he ran on Amber. I waited until his session ended, then followed him to the smoothie counter. Tyler was everything I am not, tall, tanned, and sculpted from making exercise his full-time job. He ordered something called a Warrior Goddess Bowl and flirted with the teenage cashier while it blended. "Tyler Brooks," I said, stepping up behind him. He turned. I saw the moment he recognized me. The smile slid off his face, and something halfway between guilt and fear took its place. "Nick." "Hey man, about Amber." "Relax," I said. "I am not here to fight you. Actually, I wanted to thank you." "Thank me for showing me who my wife really is. 12 years I poured into someone who would trade a marriage for a few social media moments. You did me a favor." His confusion was almost funny. This was not the script he had prepared. No raging husband, no dramatic scene, no chance to pose as the romantic hero rescuing the neglected wife from the brute. "That is surprisingly mature," he said. "I am a mature guy," I answered. "In fact, I am so grateful I want to make sure everyone sees how happy you two are. Mind if I grab a picture for Amber's page?" Before he could say a word, I snapped a photo of him holding that ridiculous bowl, eyes wide, posture stiff, the panic just starting to show. Later, I posted it to Amber's Instagram with the caption, "When you find your soulmate, every moment is a celebration. Hashtag blessed and grateful. Hashtag new beginnings." Comments lit up fast. Her colleagues, her family, the book club, everyone watching the husband publicly celebrate his wife's affair. The humiliation landed exactly where I meant it to, and I was only warming up. That afternoon, I walked into the office of Daniel Hart, Mrs. Henderson's nephew and Maple Ridge's most aggressive divorce attorney. His place sat above the hardware store, decorated with hunting trophies and law degrees from schools that sounded like they specialized in determination more than prestige. "Aunt Linda says you need a lawyer," Daniel said, leaning back. "She also says your wife is stepping out with some pretty boy trainer." "That is the situation." "How long have you been married?" 12 years. "Any children?" "No." Property. House in both names. I own my business outright. Daniel's eyes sharpened. Any proof of the affair? I set the secret phone on his desk. Messages, photos, hotel confirmations. His smile clicked into place like a latch. This is good, he said. Really good. In this state, adultery affects asset division. We can make this extremely expensive for her. I do not want her money, I said. I want something else. What is that? I want her to understand what it feels like to lose everything. His expression shifted from routine professional to genuinely interested. What did you have in mind? I told him about Brooke, about the public narrative, about the feeling that this whole mess had been choreographed to paint me as the dull, disposable husband while they framed their affair as a brave new chapter. Daniel listened without interrupting, jotting notes, nodding now and then. You know, he said when I finished, most men in your shoes want to get it over with. Take the hit, split the stuff, move on. But you are thinking strategically. I met his eyes. For 12 years I built a life that was supposed to be solid. If Amber wants a story, I will give her one. The truth, start to finish. I am a problem solver. That is the one thing about me that has never changed. Good, Daniel said, tapping his pen on a yellow pad. Because I have a few ideas you may appreciate. We spent the next hour building something precise, perfectly lawful, and absolutely devastating. When I finally stepped out of Daniel Hart's office and into the sunlight over the hardware store, I felt something I had not felt in months. Hope. Not the soft kind, either. The steady kind you can set your feet on. My phone rang as I crossed the sidewalk. Amber's name lit the screen. Nick, we need to talk. Do we? That post on my page, you cannot do things like that. It is humiliating. Humiliating for who? For both of us. People are asking questions. My boss saw it. My mother called me in tears. Sounds like a personal problem. Nick, please. I know you are hurt, but we are adults. We can handle this with maturity. Like leaving a note on the refrigerator? That brand of maturity? Silence. I want to come get my things, she said at last. When? Tonight. 7 o'clock. I will make sure the door is unlocked. After I hung up, I called Mark at the shop. I need a favor, I said. Bring Tony and Eric. We are going to have a little fun. 7 o'clock came sharp. Amber pulled to the curb in her silver BMW like she was arriving at a crime scene. She brought backup. Brooke sat in the passenger seat, chin high, phone ready, the self-appointed witness to whatever she thought I might do. From my upstairs window, I watched them talk in the car for a long 5 minutes, hands waving, faces tight. Then the doors opened. Amber walked toward the house carefully, each step like she was crossing into enemy territory. Brooke lingered near the car, phone at the ready, primed to call for help at the first sign of trouble. They did not know I had spent my afternoon preparing. At Daniel's advice, I had already changed the locks, which is my legal right. I had also set a couple of discreet recording devices, also lawful in my own home, he confirmed. Most important, I had invited an audience. Mark, Tony, and Eric were working late, on an engine in the garage with the bay door half up. Mrs. Henderson was somehow still watering her garden at dusk, hose in hand, and eyes everywhere. And Officer Collins just happened to cruise our block, thanks to a call about suspicious activity I had placed an hour earlier. All ordinary people doing ordinary things, watching. Amber knocked. I let the seconds stretch, then opened the door. Nick, she said, aiming for a polite smile. Thank you for this. I know it is awkward. Come on in. Both of you. Brooke followed her inside, gaze scanning the entryway like she expected tripwires. She was all sharp edges and fresh salon highlights, the kind that shout recently divorced and still angry about it. I just need some clothing and personal items, Amber said. I will not take anything that is not mine. Take whatever you want, I said. I am not attached to any of it anymore. That caught her off guard. Amber has always been able to read me, but apparently 12 years of marriage did not prepare her for this version. Calm, detached, almost friendly. They went upstairs. I could hear drawers opening, hangers clacking, Brooke whispering advice. 20 minutes later, they came down with 2 suitcases and a box of books. That is it, I asked. For now, I will come back for the rest after we have had time to process everything. Process everything, I repeated. Is that what we are calling it? Nick, I know you are angry. I am not angry, Amber. I am grateful. Brooke stepped forward, arms folded. Grateful. For the wake-up call. I said, for showing me what my life really was, for giving me the chance to start over with someone who actually wants to be with me. Someone. Amber's voice sharpened. You are already seeing someone? Let us say I am exploring my options. Turns out there are plenty of women who appreciate a man with a steady job and functional emotional intelligence. It was a lie, but a useful one. I watched it land in the exact place I aimed. Amber's ego. Her need for control. Her certainty that I would wait around forever while she found herself. Who? Brooke demanded. That is none of your business, I said, meeting Brooke's eyes. Although I do appreciate all the advice you gave Amber. It really helped clarify things. The color drained from her face. What advice? Oh, the greatest hits, I said lightly. Follow your bliss. Do not settle. You deserve better than a blue-collar husband who will never fit your social circle. I never said. Did you not? Amber used to tell me everything. She told me how you pushed her toward that gym, how you said she should explore her options, how you helped her decide she was wasting her life with a man beneath her station. Amber glanced between us, her careful composure slipping. Brooke, what is he talking about? Nothing. He is trying to drive us apart. Am I? I pulled out my phone and opened the voice recorder. Because I have some very interesting voicemails from someone who sounds exactly like you, Brooke. Would you like to hear them? I did not have those messages, but the bluff did not need to be true. It needed to be believable. Her mouth tightened, her shoulders sagged. Bullseye. You have been manipulating my wife, I said evenly, feeding her dissatisfaction, cheering her on while she burned down 12 years because you could not stand to see her happy when your own life fell apart. The house went very, very quiet. In the garage, a ratchet clicked and then stopped. Outside, Mrs. Henderson's hose hissed over her hydrangeas. A patrol car rolled by at the posted speed, slow enough to see everything and say nothing. And for the first time since this started, Amber looked uncertain about the story she had been telling herself. That is not how this works, I said quietly. Your husband left you 6 months ago, took half the money, and left you bitter and alone. So you decided Amber should punch a ticket to your misery club. Misery loves company, right, Brooke? Amber stared at her best friend, horror growing by the second. Brooke, is this true? Do not listen to him, Brooke shot back. He is manipulating you. Like you manipulated her, I said, steady as a level on a workbench. Like you pushed her toward an affair because you could not stand seeing her in a stable marriage when yours imploded. Stop, Brooke said, but the steel was gone from her voice. You know what the worst part is? I went on. You did not care about Amber's happiness. You just needed her down at your level, and you got what you wanted. Congratulations. Amber sat hard on the couch, color draining from her face. Brooke, please tell me this is not true. Brooke looked around like a cornered animal, then made her choice. Amber, you were wasting your life with him. You said so yourself. You felt trapped and unfulfilled. I just helped you see what was already there. By encouraging her to live authentically with a personal trainer who is cheating on half his client list, I said. That landed. What? Amber snapped. I pulled up Tyler's page on my phone and scrolled to a shot from 2 days ago. That is Tyler with Miranda Peterson. Yesterday, it was Sarah Williams. Today, it is someone named Brittany. Your soulmate is running a rotation. Amber, you are not his girlfriend. You are Tuesday and Thursday. She snatched the phone and scrolled, her face moving through denial, then recognition, then humiliation, and finally anger. He told me I was special, she whispered. You are special, Brooke said desperately. This does not change. It changes everything, Amber exploded. You blew up my marriage for this, for a man treating me like just another client. Your marriage was already over, Brooke fired back. No, it was not, Amber said, voice shaking. It was work. It was routine. But it was not over. And now it is because I listened to you. What followed was exactly what I expected. 12 years of friendship dissolving into sharp words, old grievances, and fresh accusations, with me as the quiet witness taking mental notes. When Brooke finally stormed out, Amber was crying, and I was almost sorry for her. Nick, she said through tears, I am so sorry. I did not know. You did not want to know, I said. There is a difference. Can we fix this? Can we try again? I looked at my wife. Beautiful, successful, smart, also selfish, easy to steer, and willing to throw away what we built on the advice of a bitter friend and the attention of a pretty face with nothing behind it. No, I said. Nick, please. The papers will be filed tomorrow. Daniel Hart is representing me. You should get your own lawyer. You are really going to divorce me over this? Amber, you divorced me when you walked out that door with Tyler. I am just making it official. After she left, I sat in the quiet of the house and felt something I did not expect, relief. The worst part was over. Now came the part one I'm good at, finishing the job. The high school reunion was Amber's personal nightmare come to life. A gym full of people she spent 20 years trying to impress, all under one roof, scorecards out. She had dreaded it for months. That made it the perfect stage for my last act. 6 weeks passed after our showdown. The divorce papers were filed. The assets were moving through the system. Amber's life was coming apart with a kind of math you can count on. Tyler dumped her the day after I showed her his rotation. Her job at the public relations firm started wobbling once her personal drama bled into client calls. Brooke packed a suitcase and moved to Phoenix, cutting ties with Maple Ridge and taking her poison with her. I, on the other hand, was fine. Better than fine. The shop was busier than ever. Turns out being the wronged husband in a small-town scandal is good for business. I dropped 15 pounds working out at Bobby's boxing gym. I went on a few dates. Nothing serious, just enough to remember there are women who do not see me as a project to be remodeled. The reunion took place at Maple Ridge High, in the same gym where Amber was once homecoming queen and I was the kid who fixed the sound system for school plays. I caught the irony and let it sit. I showed up a little late, wearing a suit that actually fit and feeling better than I had in years. The gym was dressed in school colors, balloons tied to folding chairs, streamers draped along the bleachers, round tables parked on the polished court. A disc jockey spun the greatest hits from our graduation year. Amber stood near the punch bowl, smile pinned on, eyes desperate. She had lost weight, too, but not the healthy kind. Stress carved hollows in her cheeks and painted shadows under her eyes. She wore a red dress that probably cost more than my truck payment, armor against the judgment she knew was already in the room. Kelly Morgan, our old class president, slipped up beside me like she had never stopped running assemblies. You look fantastic, she said. I heard about you and Amber. I am so sorry. Do not be, I said. Best thing that ever happened to me. Her eyebrows shot up. That was not the script folks expect from the wronged husband. Really, really. Turns out there is plenty of life after marrying the wrong person. Word travels fast in a gym full of people who remember your haircut from 10th grade. By the time I made it across the basketball court, the line had settled. Nick Bennett was not hiding at home, was not bitter, was not broken. He was steady on his feet, doing just fine without his cheating wife. I worked the room like a politician with a torque wrench. Handshakes, short stories, a version of events that cast me as the man who learned, not the man who lost. It was simple enough. I married young, built a life with both hands, and then learned my wife was not who I thought. Now I was free to find someone who actually valued what I bring. Meanwhile, Amber was getting the other kind of attention, the titled heads, the careful questions, the sympathy that feels like judgment in nicer clothes. Everyone already knew about Tyler, about the affair, about the note on the refrigerator. In a room full of people who knew us as kids, there is no hiding from what you did. Around 9 o'clock, the disc jockey tapped the microphone for quiet. We have a special request from one of our classmates, he said. Nick Bennett would like to say a few words. I had not requested anything, but I was not about to waste a spotlight. I walked to the mic, looked across a sea of faces, and found Amber's eyes near the punch bowl. Thanks for coming out, I began. It is good to see where everyone landed and to remember where we started. Polite applause. I let it fade. Some of you know that Amber and I are getting divorced. It has been a rough stretch, but it has also been an education. I learned a lot about loyalty, about friendship, about the difference between the person you marry and the person they eventually decide to be. The air went still. Amber stared at the floor like she wanted it to open. I learned some folks will hold the line with you no matter what, and others will drop your hand the second a shinier option waves at them. I learned trust is not glue. You cannot patch it with apologies and promises once it breaks. And I learned something else. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you ends up being the best pivot you will ever get. I paused long enough to let the words settle. Amber leaving me for her personal trainer knocked the wind out of me. But it also cut me loose from a marriage that had turned into a performance, a life about image instead of joy. It showed me who my real friends are. It gave me the chance to start again with someone who actually wants a life with me. A ripple moved through the crowd like a breeze hitting a wheat field. Amber's face went white. "So tonight," I said, "I want to thank Amber for the clarity, for showing me exactly who she is. Sometimes you have to lose what you were protecting to see you did not have anything worth keeping in the first place." Silence. I handed the mic back and stepped off the little stage, leaving the room to sort itself out. She found me in the parking lot 20 minutes later, red dress bright under the security lights, mascara running. "How could you do that to me?" she asked. "In front of everyone we know." "Do what?" I said. "Tell the truth. You humiliated me." "You did that yourself," I said. "I just stopped pretending. I made a mistake." "You made choices," I said. "You picked Brooke's advice over our marriage. You picked Tyler over me. You picked a note on the fridge instead of a real conversation. Those are not accidents. Those are decisions." I was confused. "You were selfish," I said. "There is a difference." For a second, I almost felt sorry for her standing there. Almost. "You needed a villain," I said. "You kept painting me as the not-enough husband, the obstacle between you and your authentic life. Congratulations. If you need me to wear the horns so you can sleep at night, I will wear them." I climbed into my truck and drove out, leaving her in the glow of the parking lot, finally understanding the cost of the story she had been telling. The next morning, Daniel Hart called. Amber had agreed to our terms. No contest, no alimony, clean split. She wanted it finished. 6 months later, I sold the house and bought a small cabin on Cedar Lake. Business at Bennett Auto Repair was the best it had ever been. I was in the best shape of my life, and I was seeing a woman named Laura Pierce who laughed at my dumb jokes and did not treat me like a fixer-upper project. Amber moved to Chicago, found a new job, and started over. I heard she was dating an accountant this time. Steady, quiet, nothing like Tyler. Maybe she learned something after all. As for Brooke, I never saw her again. Phoenix is far enough to reinvent yourself and find fresh people to steer. I kept the secret phone in a drawer, not as a tombstone for what I lost, but as a receipt for what I gained. Sometimes the meanest betrayal is also the cleanest gift. It shows you exactly who you are dealing with while you still have time to do something about it. People say the best revenge is living well. They are close. The best revenge is becoming the person your critics forced you to be, and realizing you like that man better than the one who kept making himself smaller so everyone else could feel comfortable. I am not the accommodating husband anymore, the guy who fixes everyone's mess while ignoring his own. I am something new, harder, clearer, not available for misuse. Amber wanted me to be a villain in her story of self-discovery. Fine. I became the hero of my own, refused to let betrayal break me, and walked out stronger than I walked in. She created a monster. All right, just not the kind she expected.